not the property that these business owners are so upset about and so sad and hurt by. It's the fact that this was somebody's vision, somebody's dream that they had to help their community. So yeah, please don't blame this on Kalamazoo peaceful protesters, because this is certainly not who did this devastation. We're better than this. This was somebody with evil intentions, with malice in their heart. Somebody that could have killed people. There's one of the pianos that was in there.
Okay, so I really didn't expect to go down this road, but I am going to be driving over to the north side of Kalamazoo right now just to check out a few vacant lots. The reason why they're now currently vacant is because there were multiple fires last week that were set in this area of the north side. We're gonna head over there and just look at the properties. I was very moved by this story, but the fact is something doesn't seem right about this story. As you can see, this entire lot is just devastated, demolished, and it extends all the way around the block. So there's memorial roses here and some balloons just to kind of show solidarity. And I just don't understand how none of this could be salvaged, because I'm looking at wood right now that doesn't even have char on it.
It was a big yellow house you could turn into like a manor or some type of inn like back in the day. And then right here, they had this big apartment building there in the process of remodeling and shit. I'm talking about a big ass apartment building. Back there, it was a brick apartment building back there. And then I believe this here was historic.
Yeah, this was the house that Twala was going to turn into low-income housing, right? She was going to have 4 families.
But this one here was
here, and that's the heartbreak.
Where the old lady stayed at. Man, this is crazy. I don't understand. If it started here, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
You got enough clearance.
That's what we were thinking.
You know what I'm saying? To get here, they put it out before it burned that big yellow one down.
Right.
Do any of this look burnt?
That's what I'm saying.
None of it.
I know. Hi, Twala. This is Julia. I'm doing okay. Just looking at the gorgeous rain outside and just sitting in my sister's house. Yeah. How are you? How are you feeling today? Hello community, so this is going to be a pretty serious video, and this is unlike any other video that I've ever created, but something about the situation really struck me to the core, and I was moved and driven to talk about my viewpoints surrounding some fires that happened here last week in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I'm gonna try to be as cohesive as possible. I've literally written an outline here for you, and I'm gonna try to touch on all of my points and everything as briefly as possible and cohesively as possible, so please bear with me. There's a lot of information that I want to talk about here, and I am going to be referencing some of my notes, so if you see me looking down, I apologize. I usually don't do that, and I usually like my videos to be more sporadic, but please continue to watch this video. It's very important to the Black Lives Movement as well as the community members here in Kalamazoo and beyond. And I personally, as well as many other community members here in Kalamazoo, are looking for justice on this particular crime. The observances that I hold or others in this community that I might bring up are not necessarily the observances of Miss Twala Lockett-Jones, who you will come to know after you see this video, or anyone else who has been immediately affected by this crime and by these fires, okay? I want to make that very clear. So, and if you're seeing this video, I have spoken to Twala. I spoke to her yesterday for 45 minutes on the telephone, and she, if you're seeing this video, she has already given me the go-ahead to post this video on YouTube, so I do have her blessing. So thank you so much for that, Twala. I hope that I shed your story in a positive light and really give it the justice that you deserve. Everything I'm presenting in this video is also public knowledge and accessed through conversations with community members. I am not with the news or any media agency. I am completely independent. Basically, I first heard of this crime and this story last Saturday at the Black Lives Matter and Pride event that was held at Bronson Park. There was a big march, and Kalamazoo County Commissioner Stephanie Moore got on stage and she brought up these crimes.
3 days ago, we watched in trauma and tragedy, Kelly Doyle, homes burned to the ground in the North Side neighborhood. Not just any homes, but homes that were just purchased to help with our housing crisis, to rehab and renovate, to offer decent and affordable housing to the most vulnerable people in our community. I don't think that it was a coincidence that those particular properties on North Street, on Patterson Street, that they were targeted, Vince Callow. I believe that they were targeted because they know that one of the property owners, Twala Jones, worked with our organizations to make sure we had housing for LGBTQ community. A Black realtor and property owner right here in Kalamazoo purchasing property to make sure that affordable housing is available for everybody, regardless of what you live. Robert Washington, right on North and Staple Street, purchasing property to make sure we have decent and affordable housing for anybody that needs it.
Several things about this crime don't sit well, and we will definitely get into that shortly. So let's talk about first just kind of some brief facts about these fires. On June 2nd and 3rd, there were 6 fires total in Kalamazoo across the span of 24 hours. The fire I'm going to narrow in on struck all 4 buildings on one entire lot on North Avenue between Staples and Woodward. Now, I actually lived in that community probably about 1 block away from where these fires occurred for 2 years when I was going to college here. So I know the area very well. It's primarily a historic district. There was one other fire that occurred around 5 a.m. just a few blocks north of this lot in another building that was deemed abandoned. It was an old piano company. And there was also one other fire further south, making a total of 6 fires. And that was on Stockbridge, and that was the next morning at 1 a.m. Officials are unsure if all of the fires are connected, but the 4 on the one lot, as well as the piano building, have all been deemed suspicious. There was no gas, electric, or water in the buildings, or a way for them to be set on fire by a non-human method. The fire on the lot along North Avenue was set in the middle house, and investigators said within seconds it spread to the other 3 structures. All properties are owned. 3 of the properties are owned by community citizens and 2 by the same LLC. So that's kind of strange, but I'll loop back to that. Strangely, approximately 3.5 hours after the fires were put out, the fires were mostly put out at 3:30 a.m. There were reports of some embers and some smoke emanating from the houses, but overall, Twala has reported that the fires were put out at 3:30 a.m. and the demolition crews were there to eradicate all 4 buildings by 7 a.m. So 3.5 hours later. This video isn't just to focus on the negativity from this. I also want to focus equally on the positive that it exists in this community in Kalamazoo, because of course anywhere in the world there's always going to be negative things that happen. There's always going to be racism, bigotry, and basically just horrific aspects of that community, and that's no different here in Kalamazoo. There have been some reportings of police brutality and other things like that, but overwhelmingly, and even the experience that I had living in Kalamazoo for 8 years, this is a very peaceful community, and the city isn't really that big. It's kind of a modest sized city for being a college town. There's breweries, there's like a really cute downtown area, and there is a lot of diversity here, a lot of community, and just a lot of arts, a lot of community organizations, a lot of parks, and It's actually a very, very beautiful town, and I know it very well. So I also want to talk about a lot of the positivity in this community, and one of those characters is Twala Lockett-Jones. Now, she is a force of nature. When I saw her videos talking about her building being burned down, this is one of the reasons why I'm making this video, is because of her, and to honor her and to honor what was and still is her vision for that lot of land. Okay, so that's really important. You know, I want to keep the focus of the video on the positive as well as justice. So one of the structures in particular, it was a gorgeous yellow house, was owned by Twala. Considering the aim of what she had planned for this building, I'm going to be focusing a lot on this video on her story. There is another house owner, and I'm not as familiar with them, but there was an 84-year-old woman in one of the houses, and she managed to get out. I'm so sorry that I hadn't brought that up sooner. Thankfully, she is safe and she has been relocated. There was also a GoFundMe for her as well that was set up. And I'm going to leave links for both of the GoFundMes at the bottom of the page so that you're able to donate whatever you can to these two victims.
I was born and raised in Kalamazoo. I am 51 years old as of May 28th. My parents are my dad is from Alabama, my mom is from Mississippi, but they moved here in the 50s. And, you know, they were married. I have 10 brothers and sisters, so I have a huge family. We're all from Kalamazoo, and we all reside in Kalamazoo still today.
She has a husband and 2 sons. She is a woman of faith, and she's been a realtor since 1996. So she is actually the second African-American female to own a home brokerage in Kalamazoo, and she takes pride in educating African-Americans in home ownership. She believes owning a home is extremely important as it builds community. She says, when people display the pride of home ownership, self-esteem, self-worth, and self-reliance usually increases. Twala first worked in PIERSON real estate, and as a bit of background on that company, which is really awesome, in 1967, Willie Mae PIERSON became the first Black licensed realtor in Kalamazoo. Willie Mae herself had her own early encounters with racism, and it certainly wasn't easy for her to build her company due to discrimination. Twala grew up looking at this house and dreaming about this house. She recalls looking in at the windows as a little girl at the candles in the little sunroom in the front.
I think the home just was grand, and I think
it's so beautiful.
This, I called her the Grand Lady.
Aww.
She just had like this beautiful presence, and I could just imagine it in my mind's eye. I could imagine it fully restored with that beautiful sun porch across the top.
Oh, so beautiful.
Little, the previous owner would put candles in each one of those windows across the sun porch at the top, and a single candle in each window.
Oh, that's so
of the home.
cute.
So during the Christmas season, there were always those candles that were lit, and they weren't real candles. They looked like the plug-in kind.
Yeah.
But they would just. It was just such a beautiful look to drive by and just see a candle.
Yeah. And when the opportunity arose to purchase this property, she took it and acquired the building last fall.
So my vision for the property, when we purchased it, it had 8 electric meters on it. And so it was kind of makeshift into an 8-unit building. What we planned to do was to renovate it so that on the upper level there would have been 4 affordable apartment units.
Yeah.
And then on the main level, we're going to use the building for mixed use. So on the main level, we were going to have a small community tea house and also a kind of a headquarters for a Girls-Build Kalamazoo program that I've been kind of formulating for the last couple of years.
Due to the building deemed abandoned, she was sadly unable to acquire insurance for it, and her plans for the building were immense. So As I mentioned before, the plot of land sits right along North Avenue. Twala intended to start working on full renovations of the home in September of this year, and her intention was to create a safe space for all community members north and south of that kind of quote-unquote dividing line of North Avenue. She says, "It is important to break down the barriers of communities and have conversations with those who don't look like us. The more I've learned about Twala and her vision, the more my heart breaks and my desire for justice burns." And I know that that's why a lot of the community members have raised these issues with the fires, because there's just a lot that doesn't sit right.
But yeah, this was a dream. Everybody that knows me knows that housing is like at my heart. That's my heartbeat. I think everybody deserves quality housing, deserves a place to call home. You can't be stable without housing. And that was part of the dream I had for this property, was to provide quality housing and provide it affordably. My husband and I, when we fix up properties, a lot of our heart goes into it. We fix it up so that it's nice enough, you know, for us to live in if we needed to live in it. We don't believe in just slapping some paint and carpet on something and moving people in. It's a lot of our heart goes into our projects and what we do.
And actually, I went to the lot, so I'm going to share some of my pictures from going to the lot, and I examined the devastating damage myself. There were signs, balloons, and lavender and pink roses on the fence. Twala's community supports her because she's a giver, and community is a large part of her life. She expressed that the outpouring of love was absolutely overwhelming. People from all walks of life reached out to her. A family member also set up a GoFundMe page, which actually gave Twala a little bit of anxiety because she's just so used to giving rather than receiving, and she really didn't want to be misread by that. But her family member really wanted this for her, and you know, she relented. And what's awesome, as within days the GoFundMe reached its goal, and it's still going above and beyond that goal. So let's just keep contributing to that fund, okay? In our phone conversations, she has expressed, "The goodness from this has moved me the most." Yes, it was emotional, devastating, and very traumatic, and in a way it felt like I had lost a child. So now moving forward, I want to talk about some of the questions surrounding this fire, the obvious being who set it. But let's review some of the strange facets surrounding this fire. I've been posting my findings surrounding the fire on a private Facebook group, and community members who live in the area are expressing a lot of the same questions. I've also interviewed a local man who's lived in the area for years and discussed others' opinions with Twala. All are confusing about several facets. The first is, since this was definitely a premeditated and targeted crime, deemed by all media outlets as suspicious, how thorough was the crime investigation since the homes were razed immediately the next morning? So that's a really big question. I mean, if you look at it, the buildings were razed about 3.5 hours after they were set on fire. So how quickly could an investigation on this arson be, you know, undertaken? Maybe I don't know enough about that, but Twala herself said she's never seen the city react this quickly as she was filming them bulldoze her house down.
I'm here with Lenora. Lenora lost her building. Is yours a total loss too?
Yeah, they gave me 6 hours to tear it down. We tore it down.
Wow. I've never seen them bring buildings down this fast either.
Baby, did you hear me?
They be boarded up for 15, 20 years.
Oh, you know it.
Fire marshal deemed it was a total loss. I've never seen them tear down buildings this fast after a fire. I have literally never seen this happen. I've seen burned out buildings boarded up for years. But yeah, I guess these were a big enough safety concern that they decided to deem them all total losses. Yes.
I didn't realize they razed or tore down property so quickly.
I didn't realize it either.
customary
I've never
thing,
seen that before.
Kalamazoo has never treated authentic historic buildings so lightly, and this town actually takes a lot of pride in its heritage. I remember the fight for East Hall just off Oakland. That's where I used to paint. There was a big protest about it possibly being broken down, and now the hall is still standing and it has been renovated and it's used for something else. So there's a lot of pride in this town about maintaining cultural heritage and historic heritage. So the fire marshal and those others said that they claimed nothing was salvageable in any of these buildings, yet you can clearly see on the video while the demolition's going on that there are a lot of beams, there's a lot of pillars. Twala really wanted to salvage the beautiful front doors as well as some of the doors inside. There were some baby grand pianos, paintings, antiques. The house had a lot of really, really priceless items in it, and they said that nothing could be salvaged. So that, I don't know, they didn't even really listen to any of the homeowners.
The next morning our thought was, or later that morning, our thought was we'll get up, we'll go down, see, assess what's there and determine what our next steps need to be as far as, do we need to board it up? Do we need to call a demolition company to get quotes on demo? Kind of that, what you have to do after an event like that. So we get to the site, and my husband gets there first, and I think he got down there around 9 in the morning, and he found out that they were about to demo the property. And even then, he's thinking, oh, they're getting ready to tear down, finish tearing down the middle structure and maybe Bob's, because it looked like a total loss.
Right.
He talked to someone, and I don't know if it was the owner of the demo company or who it was, but they say, oh no, we have orders to tear all these buildings down. So that's when my husband gets on the phone with me, and he's like, hey, they're down here and they're getting ready to tear all of our buildings down. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's the fire just happened. They couldn't have done a thorough investigation. What's going on?
Exactly. Yeah.
And even people that I've talked to that have more experience with this kind of these processes than I do, said they've never ever seen buildings torn down so fast after a fire, like literally the same day.
Additionally, as you'll see from my own photographs, a lot of what was razed has no char on it. So I'm seeing a lot of wood that actually looks not pristine. I mean, these are old homes. They were built in the early 1900s, but it looks like there's a lot that could have been salvaged. So I have a couple quotations here by Kalamazoo Public Safety Fire Marshal Scott Brooks, which were just released today in an article by mLive.com. mLive.com, thank you so much for your reportage on this. You guys have been amazing, as well as Wood TV and Channel 3 News, a few other publications. Thank you so much for reporting on this. But the Marshal Scott Brooks says, quote, I can tell you it was an intentionally set fire, but that is all I can really say at this time. He said, while that home was completely consumed by fire when emergency crews arrived, which was that center home that was set on fire, investigators were able to gather the evidence needed for an arson investigation. Let that sink in just for a moment. So while the home was completely consumed, so meaning it's ash and rubble and still technically smoking, like they said, or had embers, they were able to get what they needed for an arson investigation. What does that mean? This article on mLive says, many questions have risen throughout the community in regard to the quick demolition of the adjacent structures that also burned in the fire. The homes were all bulldozed the morning of June 3rd, as I expressed. Brooks gave multiple reasons why city building officials made that call after discussing the matter with he and his team. So let's just hear his reasons, which are valid, so I'm not discounting them, but let's just hear his reasons. The key reason, he said, was the buildings were so unstable as a result of the fire that firefighters could not safely get inside. Without tearing down the structures, they would have been unable to effectively put the fire out completely and would have left the surrounding area at risk. We are talking about houses that are across the street from an elementary school in a densely populated residential area. To put everything into perspective, you have very large houses that are unstable, that are burnt through the middle of each other, and that are falling in on each other. Okay, Now, I have an issue immediately with that statement because these houses are not falling in on each other. These are 4 houses that have ample space between one another. So let me go ahead and go back to the pictures I took of the rubble. So I would call out, if anyone is a fire investigator or that investigates scenes of crime with regard to fire, is this possible for all of these houses to catch so quickly on fire? There were reports that the flames were 30 feet high. We hadn't had any rain recently. These are older houses. So I really don't know. I'm not speaking from an area of expertise, but from what I saw, I felt like the houses had ample space between one another. So in my opinion, again, I am not an expert. I feel like the fires could have been looked after. I feel like the firefighting crew could have stayed there and made sure that the embers were put out, made sure that community members were safe. There were no flames leaping across the street. Now remember that this is on a plot of land that's surrounded by 2 streets. So you have Staples and Woodward, and then there's North Ave. So there's like a good large street. It'd be, in my opinion, highly unlikely for flames to jump across the street. But I mean, of course there is the risk of an ember perhaps catching in the wind, and you know, that is a real risk. But with that also being said, there have been a lot of community members that have reached out to me on some of my media posts that they have abandoned buildings in that area and other areas of Kalamazoo that have been sitting there boarded up for years. Buildings that had caught on fire. So I don't know what made this crime so different. I don't know if it was just that there were so many of the houses on the same lot, which is a possibility. But a lot of the community members are just befuddled with the quickness and the swiftness with which the city came in, immediately razed all of the buildings, yet said that they had ample time to get evidence of the arson or the crime. So then there's another issue I have that I wanted to bring up. One of the greatest issues with these fires, in my opinion, is the way the media reports about them. These fires were premeditated, and they coincided with the Black Lives Matter protests that were going on downtown. I read this Medium report from Matt Lechel. He is a local activist, and he was down there all night, on and off throughout the day, during that day, and the protests were actually very peaceful. The way the media is reporting about them is in nearly all cases, the news brings up that the protesting downtown coincided with the timing of the fires. Okay, now, so I guess that's fine, but even though most sources state there may be no causal relationship between the fires and the BLM protesting, in bringing them up, we know as human beings that the viewer will immediately link the two. And I think this creates a reasonable enough explanation in a lot of people's mind, though it really isn't an explanation at all for these fires. It seems like a quote-unquote good time for someone to set on a house on fire, because then it would be linked to the protests. And so then someone would just be like, oh, it's maybe just a looter. No. Whoever set these fires, it was basically premeditated, and I think that they waited for the right timing, and I think they did choose the right timing, but I also think that they underestimated the amount of reaction from the community, because Twala has a lot of community backing her up, as well as some of the other homeowners, and I don't think that community is going to rest until justice is served, or until the police actually have a thorough investigation on what has happened. I want to move on to examining motives. I found this really interesting website called interfire.org, and they state that the primary motivation for all violent crimes is power. According to this website, there are several main motives for setting a fire which are important to understand in order to find out who may have done it. Now, the top motives are vandalism, crime concealment, extremist, profit, excitement, or revenge. And I think obviously it's extremely imperative to examine a particular motive in order to find out who did it, because there's just so much confusion surrounding this. So here are my theories. Again, my opinion only. I want to make that clear. The first is random vandalism. Completely random. Someone from the neighborhood or a young kid or something I don't believe this. Okay, I'm just throwing this out there as a theory. I don't believe this. I don't think anyone from that neighborhood, kid or adult, would do that. Why? There's no motive. Why would they burn their own community down? No. And anyone who's living there would know there was an older woman in one of those homes, so they weren't abandoned. That would be a motive of vandalism or excitement. So this motive is sometimes called malicious mischief and helps to identify the type of offender, which is generally a juvenile. Okay, so let's go to number 2. This is just something I kind of intuitively felt. So when I did a little bit of more examining on who owned those buildings, and I'm going to put up a screenshot here. This is all public knowledge, by the way, that I didn't even know that you could access. I've never bought a house, so how would I know? But apparently 2 of the buildings on that lot, one of which was the initial house set on fire, is owned by the same LLC or the same group of LLCs, and I'll explain. So I have the files pulled up from this website. It's a bsaonline.com, and you could actually look at who owns any single property in the entire city or wherever you live. It's pretty awesome. And you can see how much they bought it for and all of that stuff. So now let's go ahead and take a look at these files. Now the main house that was burned, there may be a hypothesis that whoever burned that house only wanted to burn that one house and that they didn't realize that all the other properties would catch on fire. That is a possibility. The main house that was burned was purchased for $125,000 in 2018 by Evans Investment Company. Now, the very next year, it was purchased for $0. Now, I don't know anything about real estate, so please enlighten me if you can. It was purchased for $0, and it says Instrument QC, I don't know what that is, by Shepherds LLC. Okay? One of the third previous owners was Peng Gang and Gan Pui K Sandra. I have no idea. Now, that was the main house that was burned. There was another house on Woodward that was just behind that. It was the cinder block or brick house. And let's go ahead and look at that. Again, 2018, Peng Gang and Yan Pui K Sandra sold to Evans Investment Company. The next year, Evans Investment Company sold to Shepherds. Then the same year, what is that? 1 month later, Shepherds sold the property to Evans for $40,000. I'm so confused because if you look at these figures, 125K to 0 to 40, 125K to 0 to, I don't know. Anyway, something just is so weird about that. I don't know. I looked up the companies, and Evans LLC is located in Kalamazoo, and as far as the other one, they're located in California. So I don't know. I don't know if these are just facades, and I couldn't find the other one with a strange name anywhere. Like, those names were not grouped together anywhere in the internet. So could this be a case of LLCs buying up land in poor areas, then setting them on fire for insurance purposes or alternative motives, which brings my motive to profit, according to that website? And according to the website, this move could be a direct monetary gain, which includes insurance fraud, liquidating property, dissolving a business, destroying unprofitable inventory. And indirect monetary gain can include creating employment, eliminating competition, or remodeling old property. So perhaps the person who set that fire didn't know that all 4 properties would be set, or it would be caught on fire, or maybe they did and they were hoping to buy the land eventually because people lost everything. You know, something just doesn't sit right about that. I don't know. Can someone please look into those real estate transactions and tell me if those are normal? The third motive could be, and this is horrific, but this could be a targeted crime against Black lives and communities, which would be a motive of the extremist, as stated by the website, which would be a furthering of social, political, or religious causes. These targets often include abortion clinics, houses of worship, government buildings, labs, and fur farms. And they're frequently accompanied by communication, claiming responsibility, and espousing the cause embraced by the perpetrators. So yeah. And then I kind of want to loop back. I guess I don't really know what to say about that, just that I want to lead into my next point, because I'm wondering if that was the case and it was a statement against the Black Lives Matter movement, then who did it? That could be a group of white supremacists. It could be a group that is closely tied to the government and coming to different towns causing unrest because the National Guard were here. I'm just throwing ideas out there. But going back to what Matt Lechel, the local activist, said and what he reported on, and I will leave a link to his report below, he was downtown and he said that he noticed late in the evening that there were a lot of cars all of a sudden that just showed up. They were unmarked white vans and trucks that showed up downtown Kalamazoo. They were driving very erratically. This is the night that the fires were set. They didn't appear to be linked or grouped with any of the peaceful protesters that were downtown. And he said that a group of them they were white individuals, they leaned out of the car and they were yelling Black Lives Matter, but they were also laughing hysterically, not like they were taking the subject matter seriously or the protesting seriously. And then all of a sudden this white van pulled up and out jumped a bunch of police, and then they pulled a black man out of his car. And please forgive me if I'm confusing any of these details.
They got their knee on this man's neck. Are y'all some cowards? They dragging my man. They dragging my man. They dragging my man. They dragging my man. Fucking kidding me. Stay together. Are you fucking kidding me? Man, fuck y'all. You see this shit? Man, get no mother. What the fuck is this country? What the fuck is
All of this report in detail can be read by clicking the link below. Some of the news sources, I think mLive also reported using some of his coverage from that Medium report, and they were calling these people outside agitators. So my question is, who are they? Who are these outside agitators? And are there any street cameras downtown that caught glimpses of their license plates? I hope this is being investigated, because this could be linked.
Also, I've heard people say that it was some of the agitators from outside of Kalamazoo, outside of the community, that came in and burned the buildings down to make the protesters look like they're not peaceful protesters.
Yeah.
So that's probably one of the bigger, what I'm hearing when you say majority of people.
Okay.
That's probably what I'm hearing the most of.
I mean, it's really easy to access North Avenue right there. I used to live in that neighborhood. It's not that far from downtown. If someone was coming in from out of town and they wanted to raise hell and they wanted to really, really mess up some people's lives, all they had to do was just kind of drive around town during the day, scout maybe a few abandoned buildings. Maybe they didn't know that someone was living there. They didn't know that they would be hurt or whatever, and maybe they decided to start some fires that evening. What they didn't know is they were burning down someone's dream. They were burning down someone's home and really destroying a sense of community that was really being worked on and really being just given a lot of love and respect. So, yeah, so these are my kind of loose ideas surrounding what it could be. So, okay, this video is getting a little bit long, but I wanted to wrap this video up, and this video, or this reporting, or this investigation will hopefully be ongoing. I hope that this video baseline at least supports some news media outlets to continue their coverage. I've already reached out to 3 or 4, and some of those sources have expressed that the community are really upset about this, and they have been hearing from a lot of people. So please keep it up, you guys. Keep it up, community solidarity here in Kalamazoo. We have to keep pressing the police to investigate this, because whoever did this could have killed someone. You know, they could have killed that 84-year-old woman who was in her home, and she lost her home. The police, all they found, or all they were able to give her, was a few photographs, a few of her family photographs. And that was all she salvaged. you know? So, yeah, we really have to think about the lives that were affected here and keep that investigation going. So please, police of Kalamazoo and fire marshal and anyone who's involved, please continue your investigation. I want to end this video with a story that I posted by Danya Bernard Hollins on mLive.com. This was posted a few years ago, and it was about Willie Mae Pearson, the first Black female realtor in Kalamazoo that I was talking about earlier. In that story, she says, "It was 1967 at the Harrison Hotel in downtown Kalamazoo, and Willie Mae Pearson took a deep breath as she went to hang up her coat. Just then, a man tossed her his coat and hat and flipped her a quarter. She let it fall to the floor. Minutes later, Pearson entered a meeting room along with that man and others. She was the only Black person there and was introduced as the newest member of the Kalamazoo Board of Realtors. Quote, I couldn't believe he threw his coat at me, but I kept my integrity. That's what I taught my children. Yes, I hung up his coat. But when he threw the quarter at me, I let it fall to the floor." Twala is strikingly similar in fortitude and spirit to Willie Mae Pearson. She is such a genuine woman, and the fact that through her stress and everything, she took time to just sit there and have a beautiful discussion on a rainy afternoon with me for 45 minutes, a complete stranger, says so much about her character. I see her loving community. I see the outpouring of support. There were signs and balloons and beautiful roses on the fence for her, and she has her family just really rallied around her. Her father was out there, her sisters, her family, and through all of her filming, she's just got this smile on her face, and you can feel her strength exuding from her spirit. So, Twala, I am so sorry for your loss, but you are absolutely right. God has a greater and bigger vision for you, and I want to let you all know that Twala has said,
I definitely will rebuild on that lot.
oh, good. Nice.
Yes, we do, still own the land. We have no plans to sell it or, get rid of it. So I definitely, I'm dead serious when I say it, but I say it jokingly, that the vision that I had obviously wasn't big enough for God.
Nice.
So he decided that, okay, we're going to scrap your vision and we're going to create a bigger vision. So I believe that what I envisioned for that property is still going to move forward. It's just going to look different.
Yeah.
I believe it's going to be bigger and even better. I believe it's the way things have happened. I believe that site can become kind of like a nexus for all the neighborhoods that surround that.
She is not going anywhere, and she will rebuild on that land. So if someone who set that fire had ulterior motives of acquiring that land, I'm sorry, but you're out of luck. So just as a community, let's keep rallying around her and the other homeowners who have lost their homes in these devastating fires, and just continue on this quest for justice. Thank you so much for watching, and please leave any comments or concerns you might have below, and let's keep fighting the good fight, because Black Lives Matter. And I almost forgot, if you want to donate to rebuild Twala's dream, I'm going to leave the link below. And also, anyone with information on the suspicious fires is asked to call KDPS at 269-337-8994.